Good morning. Welcome as you're coming in. We're going to give just a minute as people enter. Hello, thank you for being here. We'll get started in just a minute. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm still seeing the number climb, so I'm going to wait one more minute. All right, good morning. Welcome everyone to the 2024 NIH Career Symposium. Thank you for being here. My name is Laura Marler. I'm the Director of the Office of Postdoc Services at the National Institutes of Health. I work in the Office of Intramural Training and Education, and our office is the one hosting the symposium, so we're glad that you're here. Thank you. I want to start out by talking about my goals for this talk, and really my overarching goal for this talk and for the symposium as a whole is that I hope it will help you feel more hopeful about your career. I really hope that by the end of this week, you have gained a lot of useful information, multiple career paths that you can consider, and that you've made new contacts in careers that interest you. But really more than that, I want you to feel hopeful about your career options. So with this particular talk, I want to help you understand where biomedical PhDs are working, what they're doing. I'll walk you through the agenda, thinking about the sessions that are going to be happening over the next several days. And then I'm also going to share a little bit about some of the cool features that are available on the Whova platform, just to help you determine how to best use the symposium for your career goals. Before I do any of that, though, I really want to take a minute to recognize that this is hard. Thinking about your future career is really tough. Career exploration and networking are hard. Really, anything related to career decisions can feel very challenging and very stressful. And part of the reason for that is that there's so much uncertainty around our career choices. There's this event horizon that we can't see past, and sometimes it feels like, what am I going to do in the future? And there's a lot that goes into that. How much will I make? Will I be able to get the kind of job that I want? How will I get it? Where will I live? What's that going to look like? And will I like it when I get there? Now, people handle uncertainty in different ways, but very few of us really like it. So the amount of uncertainty that comes in around our career and our career choices can be really difficult. And also transitions are uncomfortable. Transitions require us to give up something that we're used to, that we're comfortable with, that we're familiar with, and sometimes a set of identities that we hold, and learn something new. They make us go outside of our comfort zone to take on new identities and learn new things. For those of us in high knowledge environments, that can be especially tough because we're used to being the expert on our subject. We really value our expertise. And you all are in situations where you know your project, you know your techniques, you know what you're doing, and that can make it really challenging to move back to being a beginner in a new environment, and that can make transitions difficult. Especially if you're considering a change from one field to another or to a different type of job, that can be really difficult to give up something that you've invested so much time and effort in. That's something called the sunk cost fallacy, that sometimes we feel like I put so many years into this. I put so much of myself into what I'm doing. How can I change now? And that can make it hard as well. There's also uncertainty about what options are even available to you. You may feel like you're not sure what's out there, and that's something called the streetlight effect. This is basically the idea that we are more likely to look at options that are the most readily available to us and that we're most familiar with, the things that we know about. And so this comes from a story about a police officer who sees a man searching under a streetlight. And the police officer asks him, "Have you lost something?" He says, "Yes, I'm looking for my keys." And then they search together for a few minutes. And after some time, she asks him, "Are you sure you lost your keys here?" And he says, "Oh, no, 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 I lost them over there in the grass, but the light is so much better here." And so that's a kind of bias that can impact our science, but it also impacts the way that we explore careers. We want to look where the light is. And so we're often more likely to seek out and explore careers that we already have some familiarity with. My hope is that this symposium is going to help expand that circle of light for you so that more things are apparent, that you know a little bit more about a lot of careers. But I also hope that it can help you begin the process of exploration to be able to look outside that circle of light. Also, one of the things that makes this so difficult is that career decisions often feel really high stakes. Often they are really high stakes. This is something that determines what you're going to do with the bulk of your waking hours. It determines the sorts of problems you're going to address, the kinds of impacts you're going to make. It also has a lot of impact on your financial stability. Many of you have families and you're thinking about caring for your families. For some of you, career decisions are intertwined with your immigration or your visa situation, and this can feel really high stakes. There's something else on top of that too, which is that we often equate career outcomes with our identity and our self-worth. We attach a moral value to the type of work that we do, and that can make it really hard to change directions. It puts a tremendous amount of pressure and stress on our career decisions because now my self-worth as a person depends on the career decision and the career outcome. That makes this really stressful. And so I want to take a minute to recognize that stress, to recognize that this is difficult, and to say that we have created some workshops that I hope will help you through that. In our office, we have career counselors and wellness advisors, both of whom work specifically with biomedical fellows. Our career counselors help our fellows do everything from career exploration to job search, interviewing and negotiating. And our well-being advisors talk with fellows about a broad range of issues related to their well-being. If you've ever heard our director, Sharon Milgram, give a talk, then I'm sure you've heard her say, to do well, we have to be well. And we really believe that to do your best work and to do your best science and to put your best foot forward in the job search, you have to take care of yourself. So I am fortunate to have been able to work with some of my amazing colleagues who are career counselors and well-being advisors in our office to put together a series of talks that are going to pair some of the career skills that you need with some of the well-being and thoughtfulness about taking care of yourself through this process. Today, this afternoon, there will be a talk about career exploration. You can't develop the self-awareness that you need for effective career exploration if you don't manage the stress and uncertainty that come with that career exploration and all of the things we just talked about that make it difficult. And so my two colleagues, Amanda Langer and Erica Shirley, will talk about stress management and planning for success in career exploration. That's this afternoon at 3:45. You also can't network effectively if you're caught up in social anxiety and a lot of negative self-talk. And so tomorrow at 3:45, John Taborn and Holly Rothrock will talk about building professional relationships in a way that makes networking approachable. And then we've talked about a lot of the challenges that come with transitions. Navigating career transitions is a really important part of being able to move through your career now and in the long term. And so on Thursday afternoon, Denise Saunders and Christina Kuo will talk about navigating career transitions. So you'll be getting a lot of support around this process over the next few days. That said, I also want to share some of the data around career outcomes with you. I think often when we think about our career, one of the big questions swirling around is, will I get a job at all? Like, am I going to find something? So I want to start by saying the answer is yes. We see very, very low unemployment among doctoral scientists and engineers. So I'm showing data for the US, but actually this looks similar for doctoral scientists and engineers that reside outside of the US. For the overall US population in 2019, so before the COVID pandemic, the unemployment rate was about 3.8%. In 2021, it had risen to about 6.2% as a result, at least in part as a result of the COVID pandemic. For college graduates, we see lower unemployment, about 2.5%, but we see a similar rise over those years. However, when we look at doctoral scientists and engineers, we see very, very low unemployment, 1.4% in 2019, rising to just 1.6% in 2021. And so it's not just that the unemployment is low, but it's stably low. And so career outcomes are good. And also, we see that career satisfaction is very high among the same group. And so for PhD scientists in the US, around 90% or more say that they're satisfied with their jobs. That's true across every sector. And so we know that PhDs are getting jobs. We know that they're generally enjoying those jobs. But what kind of jobs do they have? This is data from the survey of doctorate recipients. So this is kind of a snapshot of, this is specifically life science PhDs. And this is from 2021. And so in this, we see that 42% are working in academia, 37% in for-profit, so that includes industry, 8% in government, 7% in nonprofit, 5% are self-employed, and then we have a sliver, 1% that's other here. I'm going to keep using these colors throughout so you can familiarize yourself a little bit with those. But this is looking at, basically this is a cross-section looking at everybody from immediately after PhD up to retirement, the whole span of work. And so this is kind of what we're seeing. And then what are they doing within those careers? Well, respondents in the same survey were asked to indicate their primary and secondary work activities with this question: on which two activities do you work the most hours during a typical week? And so before I show you this, I want to emphasize that they could rank multiple responses. So the numbers I'm about to show you don't add to 100, but what they are indicative of is the number of people who said, this is a primary work activity for me. I spend a lot of my time on this. And so in academia, this probably looks like you might imagine. 65% of people said, I spend a bulk of my time on research. And you can see the breakdown here: 33% on basic research, 33% applied research, and 4% experimental development. And then 60% said teaching is a primary work activity for me. And so that's, 60% of people said, I'm spending a lot of my time teaching. 33% said, I spend a lot of my time in management, sales, or administration. And then in for-profit, so in industry, we see that the research percentage looks fairly similar, 59%. But when you look at the breakdown, you'll see that it does look different in terms of the types of research that people are doing. So around 6% are doing basic research, 36% applied research, and 32% experimental development. Now we see 49% saying, I spend a lot of my time on management, sales, or administration, and teaching goes away, and 19% are spending a fair amount of time on computer applications. So these are just the top 3 tasks that came up. In government, it looks very similar, actually. 59% doing research. You can see the spread: 19% basic and 45% applied, 11% experimental development. So it's a little changed, but that actual percentage in doing research is very similar across for-profit, government, and nonprofit. We see 55% say, I'm spending a lot of time on management, sales, administration, and 17% on professional services. In nonprofit, again, 59% in research, slightly different layout in terms of basic versus applied versus experimental development. And then 50% still using a lot of their time in management, sales, administration, and 24% say I spend a lot of my time on professional services. And so what you can see is there are actually some real similarities here. Throughout all of these sectors, biomedical PhDs, many biomedical PhDs are still spending a lot of their time on research. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that everyone is. There are so many jobs within this, and this is a really broad view. We're not getting a lot of the granularity in these data, but it does show that a lot of people are doing research in a lot of sectors. And this is just a snapshot, as I mentioned. And so I also think it's important to look at these career outcomes over time. And this is some data from Vanderbilt. You can see the paper there, where they took a cohort of about 1,500 PhDs and looked at their career outcomes 1 year post-PhD, and then 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years. And so you can see that the percentages are fairly similar to what we saw earlier. You do see change over time, moving away from academia. I think that's largely people leaving postdocs. But what I really wanted to emphasize about this data is the amount of change that you see over the course of these 10 years. You see people moving from every sector into every other sector. And I want to emphasize that because I think one of the things that often makes this difficult, that makes it hard to make that first career choice and makes it so stressful, is that we put a lot of pressure on it. We often think, I have to pick the perfect thing. This is my chance to make a career decision. And we often kind of minimize the fact that you can always switch. People do move around among these sectors. And I think there is often a myth that once you have left academia, you can't go back. It's kind of a one-way door, but you can see in the data that that isn't true. We see people going back to academia from for-profit, from government, and even from down at the bottom, they have teaching and administrative roles. And so we see a lot of movement among these different sectors. So I'm going to talk to you about the agenda and what's coming up. As you can see from this data, a lot of the careers that are out there are in research. And so, if we look at the data here, even, this is academic research, for-profit research, and government and nonprofit research. And so, even though these are in different sectors, all of that is still really research careers. And so we're going to start out after my talk this morning with a panel on research careers. This is a chance to kind of look at and contrast some of those career options that are out there. Now, there are a ton of research careers. This is going to be true across all of the panels. We just couldn't show you everything. And so I will apologize in advance that we couldn't possibly show every career. But within this umbrella of research careers, this is going to really span from basic research to discovery, preclinical, clinical, and product development. When you think about research in industry, besides that sort of where does it fit in the drug development process, you also think about big companies, small companies, and startups. And then the roles that people have within those companies, there's a broad range of roles that they might hold. Also in the academic or government side, there are a broad range of roles. And so in addition to sort of professor and faculty roles, people are working as staff scientists, as managers of core facilities, as clinicians in various government roles. Of course, the range of fields that could be covered is huge. Public health, behavioral health, epidemiology. And so we're just showing you a little snippet, but what I think is great about this panel is that it gives you a chance to see people who are in research careers in quite different institutions. And so we have two folks from industry who are going to be able to talk about the work that they do in different types of industry careers. Someone from academia, a professor, as well as Eric is a research chemist at the USDA, so somebody doing research in government. And so this is a chance to potentially compare those careers and think about, okay, if research is what I want to do, what does that look like in different sectors? What might appeal to me or not appeal to me in those different sectors? Later today, we'll have a panel on the business of science, and this is all the stuff that all the industry careers that aren't research in a way. And so all of those things that go into making the science run, making the business side of the science run. And that includes things like patent agents, tech transfer, field application specialists, strategy, consulting, business development. You can see entrepreneurship. We have somebody here who is a co-founder of a company, consulting, marketing, sales, finance. Again, really broad. We can only show you a subset of that, but you will have the chance to hear from several people who are in different roles on this business side of science. And in this case, you won't be surprised that most of these folks are in industry in that for-profit sector. We do have a patent agent, a consultant, as I mentioned, the co-founder of a company, and somebody who's doing licensing and business development. And we do also have one speaker in nonprofit from the Mayo Clinic thinking about the partnership development. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And then later today, we have a panel on science policy and science communication. Now, this is really the side of science that is bringing the science that we do to the public, right? How do we get the word out about the great science that's happening? And that includes communicating our science, and it also includes making policy around and about our science. So this topic includes things like R&D policy, funding priorities, guidelines around how we do science, the science that informs federal and state policies that can be in government or in nonprofit or industry. And then as far as communication, those roles look like people who are journal editors, who are in publishing, technical writers and medical writers, strategy, marketing, medical science liaisons, basically any organization you can think of needs writers and needs communication. And so we have a group of people to talk about this who are in a wide range of sectors, as you can see that here. So Rachel is a senior science policy manager for ASBMB, so she's on the nonprofit side. Mac is a director of medical writing at a company, and so he's thinking about how to communicate within the company. Shauna is a freelance science writer, and then Tyrone is in policy here at NIH. And so we see some nonprofit, for-profit, government, and also Shauna being self-employed. And then tomorrow, our first panel tomorrow is going to look at sort of what are the careers that take discoveries all the way from the bench to the bedside and to the market, right? How do we get from the work that we do at the bench to actual therapeutics on the market? There are a ton of possible careers that go into that. And so again, we're kind of just scratching the surface here, but this includes things like clinical trials, both the clinicians and the clinical trial management. How do we make those trials happen? All of the regulatory careers that can come into this. So regulation at the FDA, scientific review, but also regulatory affairs within companies, medical affairs. MSLs could also fit here. There are a broad range of careers that fit into this idea of how do we bring those discoveries to the market? And so you'll be able to hear from some folks that are in industry and in government to talk about this. Also, as I talked about, a lot of biomedical PhDs are doing teaching as part of their career, right? And so we saw that for those folks in academia, this is a big part of the job that they're doing. And we know that it's something a lot of you are thinking about. And so we'll have a panel tomorrow on careers in higher education. It won't surprise you that all these folks are in academia. I do want to say that doesn't mean that everyone who is teaching is in academia. There are teaching careers in a lot of places. People have, are doing teaching and education activities in K through 12 education through outreach with nonprofits, outreach within industry, and outreach within government. And so it doesn't all look like this, but this is what a lot of the teaching careers may look like. And so this is a panel to help you think about if teaching is something you want to do in the long run, and if you want to do it in a higher education environment, then what kind of institution do you want to be at? What do you want that to look like? What do you want the balance of teaching and other responsibilities to look like for you? And so we have somebody from a research intensive university, we have somebody from a primarily undergraduate institution, somebody from a community college, to be able to talk about what are those differences? What does it look like? On Thursday, we're going to have a panel on data science careers, and this is one that just cuts across all sectors because everybody needs data science, especially in biology right now. We're making so much data, and we need ways to think about it and ways to deal with it. This is also one that's interesting in that a lot of people do, a lot of PhDs do data science outside of what we think of as the biomedical enterprise. And so we'll hear from a couple of people who are doing data science on the government side and a couple who are doing this for profit. One, Yevgeny, who is at a biomedical company, and one, Jen, who works for Meta. And so you actually get to see something a little bit different in terms of her path. And then we'll have a we'll have a panel on careers in science administration. And this is another one of those that just spans so much. So science administration includes things like program officers, scientific review, so the grant review. Also a lot of jobs within nonprofit that are centered around programs, projects, grants, meetings, things like student and postdoc offices, like our office, program management, diversity and DEIA jobs, biosafety, administration within universities. So this spans a lot of possible careers. And we're going to hear from some people that are doing really different things. We'll hear from someone who is in administration at a university, someone who is a program director here at NIH doing grants management, somebody who does grants on the nonprofit side, and then Elizabeth, I marked her here as in academia, but hers is one of those interesting careers that it's really cool how people can sometimes mix different tasks. And so she's sort of, I would say, academic adjacent. She's part of a consortium of universities and thinking about programs within that. Okay, so a lot of careers for you to think about and learn about, and a lot of people to hear from in terms of their career paths and the advice that they can share with you over the next several days. One of the things that I think also makes this difficult is that even when we know what we want or we've made some decisions, the hiring process can be really intimidating. It often feels really opaque. It feels kind of like a black box to think, okay, I just send my documents out there and what happens next. So we want to talk a little bit about understanding the hiring process. What are hiring managers looking for? Who sees my application? How can I stand out? How can I avoid common mistakes? And so on Wednesday, we'll have a panel that addresses this. We're actually going to have some folks who do recruiting and talent acquisition in different industries, in nonprofit, in government, and in for-profit in industry, and have a chance to hear from them and ask some of these questions. And then there's one more I want to talk about that falls a little bit outside of those standard career panels that we've already talked about, and that is thinking about what we do as a postdoc and what we do post PhD. And so I'm just showing some data that shows that when we look at life sciences, so life sciences is in green here, specifically PhD graduates in life sciences, around 60% pursue a postdoc. And you can see that varies by field, but we're specifically looking at life sciences. What that means is that a lot of people, a bulk of the PhD graduates pursue a postdoc, but not everyone does. It means that there are other options. And so we wanted to give an opportunity to talk about some of those options and hear from some people who did different things post PhD. And so on Thursday, we'll have a panel that digs into that a little bit. We'll have someone, Lampugan, who did a very short postdoc in his PhD lab, so essentially no postdoc, and went to industry. Sarah did an academic postdoc and an industry postdoc, so she may be able to talk about the two and contrast them, and then went to industry. Erin did kind of what we think of as a traditional postdoc at NIH, and went on to become an assistant professor, and she's in academia. And then Daniel did a policy fellowship and is now working in policy. And so this is a chance to think about some of those different options and talk about them. It is obviously a panel that's geared a little bit towards graduate students, but I want to say that if you're a postdoc, it's also worth thinking about how do people make those decisions once they're in their postdoc? How do I decide how long my postdoc should be? How do I decide when to move on? And so I think this can be useful for you as well. And then finally, I want to recognize that there are some stresses that are specific to international scientists. Science is a global enterprise, and we really depend on international scientists to produce so much of the great science that we do. Doing science internationally comes with its own stressors. You're doing your science in a new place, often in a new country, in a new language, in a new culture, and that is challenging. It's also true that the international job market looks different, and it's something that it's worth paying some attention to, and both paying attention to the skills that you need to navigate that and to pay attention to those additional stressors that come with it. And so on Thursday morning, we'll have a talk specifically for visiting fellows, navigating careers in the US and internationally. My colleague Uli Klinke will be giving that talk. So what I want to say overall is this is hard. It is. It's challenging, but success is high. People do find jobs. They find jobs that they enjoy, and there are a lot of options. Also, you aren't in it alone. You have resources. I've just talked about a lot of resources from the symposium. I'm going to talk about a few more. If you're at NIH, you have a tremendous amount of resources through our office. If you are at other institutions, please find those resources at your institutions. Find the people who can help you do career exploration, think about this process, go through documents with you, prepare for applications, prepare for interviews, find those resources. You also have people who want to help you. You're going to meet a lot of those people over the course of this symposium. I really hope that you will use this as an opportunity to grow your network. We've recruited a lot of great speakers, and so if you hear somebody talk about something that you're interested in, that you think, man, I want to know more about that, please reach out to them and ask. If there's a session that you aren't able to attend and you think, oh, I really wanted to hear about that, please reach out to them and ask. Use this as an opportunity to grow your network and to have more people that you can rely on. We all need multiple mentors, and we need mentors around our career. So I hope that you have those mentors, but I also hope that you will work to find those mentors and use this as a springboard if you don't have them. And then finally, you don't have to do it all at once. This is something that can feel overwhelming. And for those of you that are early in your training, I hope you'll hear this message that this is something you can work on over time. You have time to think about what your next steps are and what you want to do. But even if you're relatively late in training, even if you're thinking about the job search, recognize that overwhelm and give yourself some time and space, right? You don't have to do everything all at once. Rely on the resources and the people who can help you. And so then I will share a few resources. And these slides will be on Whova, so you'll have access to this. We have a number of videos on our YouTube page, and just a few that I want to highlight are the psychology of career decision-making, which is really a much deeper dive than I could do here into how we think about career exploration and how we make those decisions. Again, I want to say, please go this afternoon to the talk that Erica and Amanda are giving. That's going to be a great way to think about this more, but this is a further resource. Also, a talk about why career choices are so hard that can help kind of dive into more of those things that I talked about. And this last one, Career Advancement and Exploration, is actually a playlist. I highly recommend this because it has a lot of our workshops on doing career exploration, thinking about your next steps, creating your job documents, polishing your job documents, preparing for interviews, negotiating, specific workshops and resources for industry careers, for faculty careers. And so I highly recommend that you take a look at all of that on our YouTube page. Finally, I want to say that if you want to hear more about OITE resources, if you enjoy the symposium and you want to know more about our future workshops, then please join our listserv. And I believe Sherilyn's going to put that link in the chat so that you can join OITE-info. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. Watch our previous workshops that I just mentioned. Use our YouTube channel. We also have a careers blog, OITE Careers, and there's always great information that's being put up there. Actually, Amanda, who is going to be speaking this afternoon, runs that blog and has a lot of really nice insights. And then I'm going to skip over that because our training, unfortunately, our alumni database isn't up. So I want to say a little bit about using the Career Symposium itself, using Whova in the next few days. And this is what you'll see when you log into the homepage. There is a lot here, so you can obviously click on the agenda. I hope you will look through all the sessions and add them to your agenda. Use the information that's there. But you also have the opportunity to look at and search attendees so that you can see who else is here and connect with people. You have this option to go to our community boards. There is a lot happening on the community boards. And so I highly recommend that you take a look. This is a chance to engage with the other attendees, to engage with the speakers. You know, we're running a networking event virtually, and there's something that's lost in that for sure. But the community boards can give us a little bit of that back. This is a chance to connect with some of the people that you're meeting through this event. And there are a lot of cool things on there. There is a board for job opportunities, so you can have a look at that. I also saw some fun things. Somebody has started a thread of pet pictures, so go and see the scientist pets. And then finally, you have messages here. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you can reach out to our speakers, you can reach out to other attendees. You have this option to message them. Through the Whova platform, your email address and their email address are both protected. And so this is a great way to make contact. And then finally, before I close and take some questions, I want to thank everybody who has worked so hard on putting this symposium together. That includes a lot of OITE staff, and specifically Emily Summerbell and Cheryl and Kawakami Schultz. It also includes our really great committee of, these are NIH trainees, postdocs, and graduate students who have put a lot into thinking about what you might like to see, thinking about the careers that we wanted to highlight in this symposium, putting together the speaker list, making a lot of this happen. And so I really want to take a minute to thank them for the great work that they've done. With that, I'm gonna just stop sharing so that I can see a little bit better and ask for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, so much for that talk. So I just also put a link to attendee orientation in the chat if anybody wants to watch that and sort of have further information on how to navigate Hoover and the event. So I'm gonna read some questions for Laura to answer about the event. We have some specific questions and some overall questions as well. So Laura, can you tell us, are there any panels that talk about jobs at journals, such as a journal editor?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we don't have a panelist specifically doing that, but we do have a panel on science communication and science policy. And so I recommend that you go to that and basically think about the ways that that can fit in, because what they're going to be talking about are many of the ways that we communicate science. And so I'll apologize, we couldn't possibly represent everything, and there are so many possible biomedical careers that you have this amazing breadth of options. We also couldn't have somebody for every single one. But please do check out the science communication and science policy panel.
Thank you. We have a couple questions. Can you talk a little bit about the networking sessions and how they work within the symposium, Laura?
Yeah, sure. I didn't talk about those. So the networking sessions are specifically for our NIH intramural trainees. And so if you are an intramural trainee at NIH, please take advantage of those. You have this opportunity to get to talk with some of the speakers in a networking session. They are going to be hosted as Zoom meetings, and so you will have breakout rooms within those. If you look at the agenda, if you are registered as an NIH intramural trainee, then you'll see the networking sessions there. You can see the names of all the speakers, so you can think about who you might want to talk to. Within each session is an hour, and within each session, we're going to ask you to change rooms one after about 30 minutes. And so we recommend that you spend about 30 minutes in one sessions talking with the one or two speakers who are there, and then move to another room to talk with one or two speakers in another room. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for you to get to talk with some of our speakers. And if you are an NIH intramural trainee and you aren't registered as such, then reach out to us. We can help you with that.
Thanks, Laura. So there's another question attendee wants to know, is research at the NIH considered government, industry, or other?
Yeah, it is government research that happens at the NIH. We're a government agency. Like we talked about, it looks all kinds of different ways. There's a broad range of research that happens here, from the very basic to the clinical trials, everything in between. And so it can look like research that's happening in academia. It can look like research that's happening in industry, but we're a government agency.
Thanks, Laura. So someone is asking, and I've answered this in a few written questions, but can you talk about, so we have some networking sessions for intramural trainees and panel sessions going on at the same time. So if someone is interested in something going on at the same time, how should they handle that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So all of our talks and panel sessions throughout the symposium will be recorded. The networking sessions aren't going to be. They really don't lend themselves to that because you're in breakout rooms having conversations, and but all of the talks, all of the panel sessions will be recorded, and those recordings will be available on Whova throughout the duration of the event. And so it's also an opportunity for me to say that the sessions that we've planned are happening for these 4 days from now until Friday, but after that, you still have access to the Whova platform. You have access to those recordings and information on Whova for 3 months. And so the recordings will be up for that length of time. And so if you're struggling between a networking session and a panel, I recommend that you go to the networking session, take full advantage of that, and then you can have the opportunity to watch that panel asynchronously.
Thanks, Laura.
Mhm.
So someone has a question. As attendees, we can't see how many people are in attendance on Zoom. Could you, as the organizer, tell us how many of us are out there all tackling these career adventures and challenges together?
Yeah, so I will say that looking at the registration this morning, it was about 4,400 total registered for the event. Sherilyn, are you able to just see how many are in the room? I actually don't see it right now.
So we actually have around 630 people here. So you're in good company here with us even on this webinar. Yeah. All right. You mentioned it, Laura, but can you say again, someone is interested in the panel that's adjacent to a career in medical affairs, such as an MSL? Which panel is closest to them?
Yeah, it's a great question because MSL actually, it's a really interesting career and it fits into so many of these different categories. And so you may have heard me mention it more than once because when we think about medical science liaisons, they are communicating science. They fit into that science communication category, but they are clearly part of the clinical, translational, and regulatory careers. They fit there. And they also kind of fit into business of science. What they do is a business marketing kind of a task. And so they could fit a number of different places. I think that the clinical, translational, and regulatory is probably going to be the most helpful if you're thinking about that as a career, but I also think that you should be thinking about communication and thinking about the science communication panel.
Thanks, Laura.
Mhm.
So I have an attendee who's wondering if there's a way to increase RSVP caps for the breakout sessions, as many are capped around 20. Can you sort of work through? It sounds like I think the attendee is possibly mixing up meetups with sessions. Can you talk about the differences between those two?
Sure. Yeah. I think you're right. I think probably it is a meetup that you're talking about. So the within the community boards that I talked about, there are also meetups, and those meetups can be in person or virtual. And there are a lot there. People have already been creating some. I know that there's one in person that's planned in Bethesda, Maryland, where our main campus is at NIH. That's planned for Friday afternoon. But I saw a lot of people were also creating virtual meetups. Those are they do have a cap. It can be changed. I believe that that if you have it within Whova, if you use the Whova meeting to have your meetup, then I think that that's where the cap comes in. If you create your own link and share it there, then you have your normal Zoom capacity cap. And so that's basically how you can get around that. That said, the meetups I think are meant to be small as well, and it's a chance to actually get to know some people rather than have a huge group. And so if one meetup is full and you wanted to be part of it, just create a new one. So it's fine for there to be lots of those.
Thanks, Laura. So we have another question here. Is there a one-on-one opportunity to talk or discuss career opportunities with a specialist during the career symposium?
So this, no, the short answer is no, not really. If you are a trainee at NIH, then I would encourage you to make an appointment with our career counselors. This week is actually probably not a great week for that because they're all busy here with the symposium. But do follow up and make an appointment with them, absolutely. If you are not at NIH, then please look for those resources at your institution. And so look for somebody who can sit down with you and talk through your career. That's something that's going to be broadly available at most institutions. So some career counselor equivalent.
There's a question here. Could you tell us again, Laura, about the opportunities for international scientists during the career symposium?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the main thing that I will point you towards is the talk on Thursday that Uli Klinka is going to give, specifically about the career search and careers for international scientists. I highly recommend that you go to that. Also, we do have international scientists on many of our panels. And so look through the speaker list and you will see that in many, many careers, we've included folks who are either who trained in the U.S. From abroad, trained in the U.S. and decided to stay. Folks who trained abroad came to the U.S. afterwards and decided to stay, and folks who possibly trained here and went back to their home country or went to another country. And so there, like I said, science is global, and so we were mindful about that, but it also happened automatically because so many of the people, as we thought about this, are international scientists. If you are an NIH intramural trainee, we also have networking sessions on Thursday. So before and after Uli's talk, specifically for international scientists.
Thanks, Laura. So I see a couple more questions about networking sessions. So again, those are for NIH trainees. Basically, what you see in Whova is what you have access to. So if you see the networking sessions, you're able to attend them. If you don't see them, then it means that's not a part of your symposium experience. Laura, can you talk, though, there's a special opportunity on Friday for trainees who are not at the NIH?
Yes, yeah, thank you. So on Friday, we will have a session, a recruiting session for research opportunities at NIH. And so if you're interested in working at the NIH and doing research here, then there'll be a talk on Friday morning by Dr. Lloyd Conlon, my colleague, about research opportunities at NIH. And then we'll have a recruiting session, but it's going to be a Zoom meeting where actually you can go to breakout rooms to talk with representatives from various institutes and centers within the NIH. There will be training directors from different institutes there. There will be some PIs who are actively looking for positions for postdocs. And so if you're interested in working at NIH, that's a great recruiting tool, and also a great chance to just learn about what does it look like to work at NIH? How do these different institutes work? What kind of research do you do, and those sorts of things.
Thanks, Laura. Okay. I see a question about the in-person meetup. And I'm going to say that go ahead and go in Whova and contact the organizer of any meetups if you have questions about them. Because like Laura mentioned, those are being organized by different people. So if you have a question about a meetup, it's better to go in Whova and ask them there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just add that you all have the opportunity to start a meetup as well. And so if there's something you don't see that you want, go ahead and start it.
Thanks, Laura. Okay. I'm seeing specific questions about, it looks like people are looking for particular speakers, maybe one in health equity research, maybe one for program management or budget analyst. Can you talk, Laura, a little bit? If someone's looking for something really particular, they can, how can they use the Career Symposium to sort of launch a search or launch an exploration of a particular career path if they don't see it exactly represented in what we're presenting in our panels and networking sessions?
Yeah. So first, feel free to look through our speaker list. And so when you go to the speaker list in Whova, you can search by name, but you can also search by topic, by category, by position, by employer. So you have options there. If you aren't seeing something that you're specifically interested in, then I recommend that you think about the careers that are near that. And so, for instance, like somebody asked about an MSL, okay, that's similar to a lot of the communication careers that we've talked about, similar to some of those clinical, translational, and regulatory careers. And so go to those sessions, but also you can reach out to speakers within those sessions. And so if you're thinking about a very specific career and you aren't seeing it here, talk to the people that are in those adjacent careers. And I say that because they are familiar with the types of roles that are in their field, in their sector, and they know a lot more people. They know a lot of people that you don't know because they're already there working in that field. And so that's a great opportunity to create a connection that may not be exactly what you want to do, but gives you the chance to say, here's what I'm really interested in. Do you know somebody who's doing this? Do you know somebody you could put me in touch with? So I think one of the best tools for your career exploration overall is to do informational interviews, which is basically to sit down with somebody to say, could I have 20 minutes of your time to just hear about the work that you do, to hear about what your job is like, how you got there, to get some advice from you. A lot of the same things you're going to hear from our panels, but this is a chance for you to sit down directly with them and ask those questions. And so I recommend that you look for people who you could do an informational interview with that could give you more information about that specific career that you're interested in. And if you aren't seeing that in our speaker list, it's okay to ask, hey, I'm really interested in this. Who could you recommend to me? Also, do your own research and find people who are in those careers. It's okay to reach out to them. And so you may be surprised how receptive many people are, even to a cold email, because a lot of people value the chance to mentor scientists who are coming up, who are doing the things that they did, and the chance to help somebody make that leap into a career that they have already entered. And so I highly recommend, yes, use the symposium to both look at the people who are here, to look at the people they might be able to connect you to, but also start to build your own network and think about ways that you can find the people that you are really interested in and sit down with them to say, hey, tell me about this. How would I do this?
Thanks, Laura. I think we have time for just a couple of questions, so I'm going to group a couple. There's some questions about opportunities for master's level graduate students. One specific to whether Friday's session is geared toward them, and another just generally asking if the Career Symposium is useful for master's students.
Yeah, so our main focus with the symposium is PhD level careers. So many of in fact, I think most of the speakers that you see, if not all, have PhDs. But that doesn't mean, or have terminal degrees, but that doesn't mean that everything that they do requires a terminal degree. And so I do think that this is still useful for master's students. It's useful in terms of thinking about where you might like to end up, and it's useful in terms of thinking about, well, what roles do I really need a PhD for versus maybe not. And so I think that there is value there. Although I have to say it is made with PhD graduate students and postdocs in mind. And for the session on Friday, the recruiting session, now that is really geared towards hiring at the postdoc level. That said, there will be training directors from many institutes in the breakout rooms, and they're the ones who have the information about their institute, about hiring in their institute. And so I think that it could still be useful for you, especially if you found yourself in a room that wasn't too busy or crowded.
Okay, thanks, Laura. I'm going to give you these two and say they're the last two. They're different questions, but you can answer them, and then I think we'll be done with questions. So the first is asking whether we're going to touch on K99 or R00 awards during the Career Symposium. And the second question is where attendees can find jobs posted in the Who.
Okay. So as far as the grants, we are not specifically, like, there's not a talk about K99 or R00 awards. But I do think that it's a fair question in some of the panels. And so if you had a question about, for instance, in research careers or in the higher careers in higher education, it would be fine to ask about that. Also, we have a fair number of faculty that are here as speakers. And as I mentioned, you have this opportunity to message them through Whova. And so you can also reach out to ask, what did this look like for you? As far as the job postings, so within the community boards, it's actually the job openings is just one of the community boards. And so it's not pinned to the top or anything. And so I think the best way to find it is actually by when you go into community boards, just search for job openings and that will bring it up. And there are two tabs within that. The first one is job openings, where employers have listed jobs. And then the second one is job seekers. And so you have the option to share your information there as well.
All right, Laura, do you want to close this out?
All right. Thank you all so much. Yeah, we are at 11:30. I appreciate you being here. I'm very excited about the symposium. I hope that you all gain a lot of great information about careers that you're thinking about and that you're interested in. I hope that you will use this as a springboard. As we've said, it's a large event, but it can't possibly be comprehensive. There are so many careers in this space and so many options and ways for you to explore them. And so please use this as a springboard to help you build your network and continue your career exploration. And I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you very much. And we appreciate you being here.